think we're getting there. Hello, welcome to Composer Talk. I'm gonna adjust this camera so it's a little less awkward. There we go, I like that better.
Yes.
Alright, but oh, I'm also gonna kill the audio, that would be bad. Okay, there we go. Now welcome to Composer Talk. Zach Daniels here.
Jacob Frost.
We're, you know, we just keep talking about music stuff. We just don't shut up. Also, trying a new angle because, well, long story short, my tripod broke, so now we're, like, filed into my office in an awkward manner. It's not awkward for me, but it's awkward whenever I have to type and stuff. So if you see me leaning forward, it's not because I'm, like, trying to do Pilates during the show. It's just because the keyboard's in a bad spot.
You're gonna get some exercise.
If it's not swimming, I'm not gonna do it. That's my policy with exercise. Anyways, today we've got a few topics. It's actually been a relatively slow news week.
News-wise, yes. We did have musical Times, prominent American publication, just released their list of the 30 professionals of the year, and their theme, I guess, is movers and shapers. So we're not necessarily talking about creative artists, although many of them are. We're talking about people in the music industry and in the arts industry who are kind of moving things forward. And notably, the composer Tania Leone is on the list. She recently composed an opera called The Little Rock Nine, which is based on the story of the 9 students in Little Rock, Arkansas, who integrated the Central High School, in the 60s.
I know it's definitely not the only one of that. It's actually, quick question. So, for you, and this is technically more of a news talk, but I'm just curious.
Right.
What do you think about composing things in reaction to tragic events?
I think it's all how you do it. I mean, when I tend to stay away from political topics when I write, just because I don't find it personally to be something that really inspires me or gets me going, and also because in my music, I kind of want to my MO when I write is kind of to transcend politics and transcend the things of daily life, rather than to get into them. But I mean, whether it's political or it's just an event we can all agree is tragic or unfortunate. I mean, I think it's art. I mean, art deals with life. So I think it's all in how you do it. I mean, if you write a piece based on a tragic event or something that's really disrespectful and you come across like a jerk, then it's not going to be successful. But I mean, well, you've heard of it. I haven't seen the John Adams opera, the Death of Klinghoffer, but that's one that was very controversial. You know about this?
I haven't been introduced to the opera, but I do know of its existence.
Right. It was I haven't seen the opera, so I really can't comment on how legit the accusations were. But he wrote an opera based on a terrorist attack on a I think it was an Israeli flight, where the terrorists murdered a Jewish man, and the opera was accused of being anti-Semitic, and John Adams came out and said, no, it's not anti-Semitic just because something bad happens to a Jewish person. Like, I'm not trying to say the terrorists are good.
Right.
No, but I mean, I think actually the daughters of the man who was killed were the people who criticized the opera, which their reaction...
I can see where they're coming from, but I guess I just don't agree.
Well, I don't comment because I haven't seen the opera. I would have to actually watch it to form an opinion, and I think that's true for anything. And I think when people who are directly affected by a tragedy come out and say this is not respectful, they need to be taken seriously. Do their concerns determine whether the art is good? Or,
no, but it warrants an investigation.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I do think it needs to be taken seriously. So I can't comment on the specific quality of this opera because I haven't watched it.
Well,
But,
the reason I asked was because I remember for the 10th anniversary of 9/11, there were a lot of pieces coming out about the event, and one of my first pieces was about it even, but I remember that there was a piece for choir. I don't remember who did it, but there was a piece for choir that incorporated little snippets of radio transmissions that were taken that day, and it was considered really edgy and really kind of like, this might not be okay type thing.
See, I don't see how that's not. I mean,
well, the thing was the radio broadcasts, because the radio broadcasts were actually like screams and things like that,
right?
Which it portrayed. Basically, the goal was, as I recall, again, this is so long ago that I heard this piece, but I believe the goal of the piece was to create kind of a soundscape almost of what you would have witnessed if you were at the foot of the towers looking up. And I believe that I from what I recall the piece, it seemed to kind of hit that vibe. So I don't know.
And a lot of the people who are directly affected by a tragedy like that, just, I mean, I think it would be easy for somebody who is actually involved to interpret that as insensitive, but the people who were directly affected really aren't the audience of a piece like this, because I think a lot of times when you go through something like that, you just don't want to think about it. You know, you don't necessarily want to hear the tribute that some composer wrote to it. You want to blot it from your mind. And I mean there were a lot of pieces written about 9/11 that got acclaim. I mean, well, another John Adams piece on the translation won the Pulitzer. Steve Reich's WTC 9/11 for string quartet and electronics. But yeah, the other thing about this is there's also a fine line between writing a piece about a tragedy that's a tribute, and writing a piece or doing any kind of art that exploits tragedy for your personal gain.
Right. Now, what do you feel about, because, like, the way my piece was approached, and I didn't receive criticism for mine, but I'm curious why mine didn't. Because, first of all, it was a bad attempt. But, second of all...
I mean, you were, like, what? Like, 15?
I was 14. I was a young'un, remember?
Right.
Yeah, I was a young'un.
I don't...
But, no, maybe I was 15. Yeah, I might have been 15.
Around that age.
But,
yes.
I basically just created kind of a narrative of the day. And it had small little movements that were actually just sections. And it was basically just, you know, New York sunrise, you know, urban street, and then you heard throughout the urban street, you just heard drones in the bases building that were to represent plane engines. And then you had the plane crash, which was simulated by the violins screeching, and then it was
right.
Yeah, it was. But and then I had like the sirens and the orchestra, all that stuff, and I had the actual towers falling down, which that part it's really cool in context. And I just wonder, because mine, at least in my opinion, portrays a very specific picture of that day that to survivors they might not like, but these pieces that are more abstract are the ones that seem to have received criticism. So it's almost like, are they criticizing it because they feel it's disrespectful because, oh, it's not as beautiful as Mozart, or are they criticizing it because they just don't want to remember it? That's my question.
I think it's, I mean, I really just think that the survivors are not the intended audience of a piece. I mean,
that's fair.
And 9/11, I mean, it affected the whole country. I can imagine if I was, you know, if I had survived 9/11 and somebody was like, look, I wrote a piece that takes you through the whole day, and here's the planes, and here are the towers, I'd be like, no, I don't want to hear that. but like I said, I wouldn't really be the audience. And ultimately, I mean, you're creating something that both appeals to the American, for something like that, the American public as a whole who were affected by the event, and hopefully creates a remembrance that will last beyond, I mean, all of our deaths, you know, and
yeah, I can see that.
So yeah, I mean, I haven't heard your piece.
Yeah,
I imagine it's probably very respectful. I mean, you don't seem like the type of guy who, like, let's, you know, 9/11, you know, let's.
I mean, to be fair, I did just gut Sonata Form, but that's a different story. Yeah, well, anyways, well, I mean, let us know. I mean, this news ended up being more of a discussion topic, but do let us know. I mean, is it offensive to write music in honor of a tragedy or in remembrance of a tragedy? And if so, how far can you go before it becomes that way? Just let us know. So what else is going on?
And well, I mean, we
the other names on the list.
I mean, but also we mentioned Tanya Leon, who wrote the piece about the 9 students who integrated Central High School in Arkansas. Also, Bob Becker is on this list. He's a member of Nexus Percussion Ensemble, composes and arranges for them, and a Yuval Sharon, who is the founder and artistic director of a performance company called The Industry that does a lot of contemporary opera. They did a Lou Harrison opera a couple of years ago, a mobile opera called Hopscotch that was written by 6 composers and meant to be listened to on like a series of train rides, like through I don't remember what city this is in.
That's
but it's
cool.
New York or whatever. You're on the subway and you're supposed to. So yeah, a lot of people connected to composition and new music on here.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the list is there on your screen. That's screenshot if you want. Look at some of these people, because some of these people, I'm familiar with about a third of these people I've heard of, and of those, I'm not intimately familiar with all of them. But
I mean,
there's a couple that I just haven't even heard of, like Joan Squires.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all these people. I mean, Alex Ross wrote The Rest Is Noise, which is a great book on 20th century music, if that's your thing. The Rest Is Noise by Alex Ross. But yeah, so people.
And sorry, I just did put it on your screen. So now take the screenshot.
Now you can see it.
Yeah, sorry about that, folks. All right, so what else is next?
Well, our only other big news item from this week, the Golden Globe nominations have come out. We're in awards nomination season. I think last week we talked about the Grammys. And there's 5 nominees for Best Original Score for a Motion Picture. As you can, is it on their screen?
It is now.
Now it is. As you can see, Carter Burwell for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which that title sounds really boring, but apparently it's actually a really good movie, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing it over the break. Alexandra Desplat, I don't know how to pronounce. It's a French name. I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
For The Shape of Water. Another acclaimed film. He's a very prominent film composer. I was looking at the other films he had been nominated for. He's
got a lot of, I want to say, the B films that are like really good B+ films.
Well, even he one of them. The Imitation Game is one he was nominated for in the past.
Like a lot of these nearly great films that have a lot of good stuff.
Argo, I think he did the score for that.
Okay, that would be would that be considered an A tier film? I mean, it's not as widespread.
I think it depends on what you consider an A. Like when you say B movie, like people.
No, I don't mean B as like. No, I don't think of that. Like C and D movies for me are the cheese movies.
Right.
B is like you almost made it to immortality type thing.
Yeah, well,
I mean, A are like the immortal movies.
I mean, I mean, these are all movies composed made in the last 10 years. I mean, we don't really know what their legacy is going to be. I kind of hesitate to give grades like that to movies.
That's fair.
But for a lot of acclaimed films, he's Johnny Greenwood, who I haven't heard of, for Phantom Thread, and then of course your big names, John Williams for the host, and Hans Zimmer for Dunkirk.
I mean, you might as well. They're probably just thrown in for good measure at this point. We haven't seen these guys in a couple of years.
I think, Hans... Well, we have the list. Hans Zimmer was nominated last year. He did part of the score for Hidden Figures. Morricone won the Golden Globe and the Oscar in 2016.
Oh, I remember the 26... I remember that stuff. 2016 was an interesting year because there's still rumors going around that John Williams was kind of cut out from it from one of his movies. Some people are thinking Force Awakens. Because people were looking at it like, this is an incredible score, especially for, I think the piece in question was Rey's theme from Force Awakens, which I think that's one of the best tracks on there. But yeah, there's a lot of the 2016 Golden Globes are
Mhm.
like some of it's like and across board, not just in music, across the board, it's like one of those. It's just known as one of those. This is a weird year type thing. Like there was a lot of stuff.
John Williams almost doesn't need an award for Star Wars.
Well, no,
because
he
everybody
doesn't.
knows
Yeah.
that Star Wars scores are great.
Well, and these aren't bad
Mhm.
composers or bad films. Like I recognize about a third of the films. I'm not a film buff, but I recognize about a third of the films. Most of these
Antonio Sanchez
composers.
in 2015 Birdman. That score was literally just a snare drum.
Yeah, that
I mean,
it worked. It was
I mean,
effective.
it was like
but-
I can understand why. I mean, it might seem, well, why would you put him on the list? But I mean, it was extremely effective.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie?
I've seen clips because of you know, the villain from the new Spider-Man movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Michael
I've
Keaton
seen,
played,
and
an
people did
XP
lots.
of his-
People have done some interesting splicing between the two movies, Birdman and
Trent
then
Reznor.
that. Yeah, that's.
Um,
Anyway, so this is up on your screen. Feel free to visit this site. It's just on the Golden Globes website, and winners and nominees, and then Best Original Score Motion Picture. You can look it up. You can see all these past winners, and you can go back even further. I think you can go back as far as the awards go.
Oh yeah, you can look
Yeah.
look up
Well,
everything on here.
it used to be that you couldn't look back all the way. You used to only be able to look
Mhm.
back through a few years, but then they realized that
Yeah.
the internet is an archive.
And I mean, in a couple weeks, we'll probably talking about Oscar nominees, and I'm sure we'll probably see.
Oh yeah,
some of
and there will
these-
be just as many.
some of these on there also.
There's
so-
always a little bit of bleed over between the two. I find,
Mhm.
especially in film, well,
Right.
film composition rather, because it's just it's really easy to write a bad score for a good film, but it's really hard to write a great score that elevates a mediocre film to greatness.
Yeah.
I guess, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Mhm.
seems that those are the type of scores that really win these things. And it's because the scores do carry so much power.
And well, some of these are also very acclaimed movies. I've never heard of the John Williams.
The
movie.
Post, I heard a little bit about it.
So I'm not sure if it got a lot of attention. I mean, I haven't seen the movie. I
Well,
won't
keep in
judge
mind,
it
the
based on-
qualification is that it has to have been nominated by somebody.
Right.
Anybody could have nominated it, and then it's compared objectively,
Right,
and then, like, there's voting, and
Mhm.
then there's, like, some executive committee, I think, that, like, not really filters the votes, but I think they more just make sure that it's legit type thing. They basically screen it to make sure, oh, they didn't take a complete flubtard score and elevate it to greatness. Well, and honestly, it's good to have those kind of things in place. Like, honestly, you know, I've been on that side, so to speak, for judging compositions for, like, Inner Soundscapes and all that.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it is just like, oh, hey, we've approved these pieces. You know, Dr. Karathanasis, will you just make sure that we didn't let through any bad ones that we just felt attached to?
Well, you know,
And it's just a formality, really.
As long as your process is transparent and fair, you know.
Right. And it's with composition contests, it is definitely most of the time it's transparent and fair, but there are some things that are just kind of expected like that. I mean, every single composition thing you send to will, at least legit ones, will have one quick screen out process of listening to a good chunk of the piece and deciding, is this even worth continuing? And then it will go to the actual selection process, which I do have a problem with that, but we should talk about that sometime, actually.
Yeah, well,
Like,
maybe
selection.
next week. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be an interesting topic. We should go into that further next week. But yeah, so yeah, again, not necessarily an exciting news week, but it's kind of some news that will lead to news.
Yes.
I feel.
We'll get
but,
to the winners in February or whatever, and yeah. So.
Yeah, but well, speaking of film composition, Star Wars this week.
Yes.
Star Wars in a couple days.
We are going to see Star Wars on Thursday.
I always
And-
go to see movies, for those that don't know, on the very earliest showing in the time zone I reside in. Literally, I would have to drive to Tennessee to get to an earlier show. So, yeah, we're seeing at 7 p.m. on Thursday, the earliest preview showing possible. I'll be getting there like 2 hours before the show to make sure that I have the best seats, because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. Like, it is ridiculous. Star Wars, Warcraft, and Halo are kind of my three. If it's those three things, I will take you to school.
Yo, I mean, and we saw Force Awakens together a couple of years ago. And
we did. Yeah, oh, I cried.
So it's becoming a tradition because I think won't the I don't know if I'll be here when the third film comes out.
Yeah, you might not unless you decide to do doctorate.
It depends on where I do my doctorate.
Yeah.
So
well, we'll figure that out.
Well, neither of us. Who knows if either of us will be here?
No, I'll be here.
Well, no, because you and I graduate at the same time, so you could theoretically, get a job.
Oh, that's right.
In, I don't know,
Man, I might be seeing the final movie somewhere else. Yeah.
Or yeah.
Actually, no joke. I saw a job in Montana.
I think that's why I said because you were saying something about.
Anyway, long story short, there was a great position that posted for me in the frozen north, not Montana specifically, but it would have been perfect for me in 6 months because they were looking for somebody that was either done with their doctorate or ABD, and in 6 months I'll theoretically be ABD. And it was posted a month or so ago. They're like, yeah, we want to fill this in the next couple months, and I'm sitting there like, no. And it was literally it was tailor made for me because get this, they wanted a composer who can do electronic music, who knows how to run live streams because they want to start that,
right?
Who knows how to do video editing, who knows about websites and knows about software, and is comfortable with computers.
Well, you can.
They literally created this job for me.
Dr. Lamb, let me take my genitals now.
I think I joked about it, and he said something like, "That's too much paperwork." He's been joking that he just wants me to leave his office at this point. Like, well, keep in mind, I've been there. I've been here for so long, 3.5 years, most of which I've been under him. That's a long time. Then again, I was with Dr. Sharp for like 6. How's Dr. Sharp still sane? I owe that man a lot. He put up with me for 6 years.
You better get him something nice for Christmas.
Yeah,
he's listening.
Dr. Lamb, you're the second one.
Hi, Dr. Sharp and Dr. Lamb. If you're out there listening,
I'm sorry, Dr. Lamb, that you have to put up with me. And Dr. Sharp, you literally signed up for it. You literally signed. Actually, wait, Dr. Lamb did too. They both signed up for it.
They're the ones who accepted you into the program, so
it's true. You gotta deal with it. Anyway, so that stuff. Joking aside, let's get into some discussion topics for this week.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So we purposely this week. I mean, we've had this backlog because I knew that we'd have a week that we couldn't come up with new topics that we wanted to talk about. Because truth be told, we have more topics that we want to talk about. But basically, we like to kind of do a bit of research ahead of time. We like to know a little bit so that we don't just kind of dive in and be like, this is a thing. Because that loses our credibility. So we purposely had this backlog, and I'm glad that we had it because, well, we just came out of our finals week. Because for those who don't know, in grad school, your finals week is really dead week.
And I just literally at 12 o'clock last night, I sent in my last paper. I'm like, I'm done. So,
dude, Ashley actually asked if you were still alive. She actually asked me if I should check on you because we hadn't heard from you since. Well, no, because
what happened to me. This is a bit of a digression. What happened to me this week is I got all my composition done, and the next day, my computer died on me. Actually, my
computer broke.
But I have a Sony Vaio, and parts that they don't make it anymore. Parts aren't immediately accessible. So I'm like, well, it's good that I got.
Problem was?
What?
It's because you bought a Sony Vaio.
I did. My parents bought me the Sony Vaio, and it has served me.
Mr. and Mrs. Frost, buying a Vaio is bad. Bad.
They're gonna come and kick your ass. Like, how dare you insult our. The Vaio has served me well, but the cord conked out on me. So luckily it happened after I got all my composing done because
I wasn't gonna let you use my computer.
I don't have. Zach doesn't have Sibelius installed on here even.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you do? I thought you.
No, I still have it. Like, I still have Sibelius on all my machines. I still have Finale on all my machines. Believe it or not, I still have MuseScore on all my machines. And Final. Yeah.
Noteforge, Lilypond.
Noteforge isn't. Noteforge is Kyle's thing.
Oh, wait, that is Kyle's thing. I'm thinking of something else. I don't
Are you
remember.
thinking of Notepad?
Notepad or something like that.
No,
Yeah,
it's StaffPad. I
Staff
don't have
Pad.
StaffPad. That's the one notation software that I have not got my hands on yet.
I'm not sure, but I still had to do a paper, so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna spend all day at the library finishing up this paper. So I think
Whatever works. But
Yes.
yeah, so for those of you looking into grad school, your finals week is really dead week. Anyways, so which one do you want to tackle first, my friend?
let's go ahead and talk about the data one, because I think that's kind of that has a lot of stuff involved in it. Basically, there was an article that came out on don't remember the name of the website. We're pulling it up right now. But it was Pigeons and Planes. It's a blog, and they're talking about how production companies and record companies are starting to really get into looking at our data on streaming sites, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spotify a lot, because it's kind of the most prominent site. But they're developing programs and tools to really analyze the data of who's listening to music, what music gets the most hits, and using this data to shape what kind of music they advertise to us, what kind of music record companies and production companies will take on, who they'll sign, who they'll give a deal to, all these kind of things.
And keep in mind, that's actually only the popular music end of it. This can be extended to us too really easily, because they can really easily look at, let's just say, let's use me, you, and Chelsea as a quick sample pool. Let's just say that they're taking samples for, okay, the week of December 1st, we're going to sample who between these three composers are most listened to. Let's say I have like a big interview or something, and so I have a lot of people at the right places looking at my music. And let's just say that bumps me from, let's just say that we're each averaging like 20 plays a week. Let's say that bumps me to 30. And so while you and Chelsea have still 20 that week each, I would have 30. So with this new algorithm, they would then push and be like, okay, you're looking for instrumental chamber music composed in the last couple of years. Listen to this guy. Those other two guys, you don't need them. And that is something that, I mean, yes, while it technically does kind of provide the safest method, it kind of harms the art of discovery. And a lot of us really do rely on discovery.
Right.
Like, I rely on string quartet and limit the search to within the past 2 years. I rely on that to give me new string quartets, or at least recently performed string quartets, that are prominent and that I might be interested in listening to, not all from one composer. And this basically would alter that towards like the majority of that composer, and then maybe for like every 5 pieces of mine there might be one of yours or Chelsea's.
And I mean, the concern that's brought up in this article is that this is, instead of actually developing artists, this could get rid of artist development. We a company, a producer, a record company, finds talent, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to invest in this person, or invest in this group, composer, performer, and we're gonna and make an actual monetary investment in helping this person get their music out there and make their music good, and hopefully that investment pays off. Whereas now it's very easy for these same companies to not do that, to simply, well, so and so gets the most clicks. So another article that also came out this week. I don't know if you had time to read this.
Which one?
It's from the Baffler. I think I
did not read that
okay.
article.
Briefly, it's talking about Spotify, and talking about how Spotify is essentially turning music into musical wallpaper.
Oh, okay, I've
Did
seen
you look
that.
at
Yeah,
this?
I've seen
Okay,
that. Yeah.
because
well, I have my own issues with Spotify outside of that, but that honestly kind of just compounds it for me.
Well, and I mean, if you go to Spotify, and I have it on my computer. I very rarely use it. I mean, I really only use it to if a friend said, "Oh, check out this playlist," I'm like, okay, I'll listen to it. But if on Spotify's front page, you know, all the stuff there. It's chill playlists, you know, playlists to relax to, playlists to work out to. And I mean, and you essentially, what the article is saying is that you essentially have this illusion of choice. But, and I mean, you do have the choice of what to listen to, but the program's manipulating you into clicking on the things it wants you to click on.
Right. Well, for me, part of me actually, believe it or not, despite my superb hatred of Spotify and of where that takes us, part of me wants to say, is this returning us to the idea of functional music? Because keep in mind, music, until the Baroque period, really, music served a function. Whether it was a social gathering, or, you know, just me and you having fun on the piano, or just, hell, we need something to accompany this grand entrance, or hey, we need something to dance to. Well, the idea of the concert is relatively new, and it's something that, I mean, maybe Spotify, I don't think they're really on to something here, I don't want to say that, but maybe this is something for us to think about. I mean, is there anything wrong with writing a perfectly legitimate piece of, as you put, wallpaper music?
And I don't think, I mean, and, you know, I don't have a problem with functional music. I think the problem comes into play, and I guess we can say that, you know, this really isn't Spotify's fault. The real problem is not functional music. The problem is that people listen to music as functional music, as background, and don't do anything else. A lot of people don't strive, you know, don't invest in the arts in any way. Yeah. You know, because I mean, good art, whether it be music or literature or a painting, you know, it's good for us. It, you know, it changes us. It changes how we see the world. It brings beauty into our lives, and you know, while functional, you know, while the background music you listen to in the car or while you do homework isn't, I don't think it's bad. It's not necessarily doing that. I mean, you're not putting all your energy into experiencing this music. A lot of times the music was not composed with artistic quality in mind. It was composed with, you know, it being good background music in mind. And while I don't have a problem with that, I do think that people who only listen to music that way are depriving themselves of what art can do for you in your life. And you know, I think it's kind of interesting how much of this do we blame on Spotify? You know, and how much of it,
a lot of things
and how much, and how, but this specific, and how much of it do we just blame on people? Because, yeah, I mean, you can the article can talk about how Spotify creates, you know, the illusion of choice and manipulates you into choosing certain music, but ultimately you're the person who chose to use Spotify.
Well, yeah, but my problem with Spotify doesn't just end there, though. My problem with Spotify is Spotify really is to blame because Spotify has cheapened and outright robbed musicians. I mean, people say, well, it's just online radio, but it's different because a radio station, like an FM radio station, you have to play rights. You have to pay rights.
You have
for
to pay.
Everything.
Yeah.
You have to pay for broadcast privileges. You have to report, hey, I played your song this many times, so I owe you X amount of dollars, and you have to show transcripts. Spotify, they have the capability to produce this stuff. However, they do not pay artists what they should, and that's why I'm personally a fan of the idea of they should be treated like radio service, because that's really what they are, and they need to be charged for what they're doing. And what they're doing is, honestly, they're trying to say, oh, well, we're introducing people to music, we're bringing music to the forefront, and yes, I do believe that music is important. However, I also believe that a roof over my head is important.
Yeah, we have to eat.
You know, I had to pay for the roof over my head. I have to pay for curtains to cover my window. I've got to pay for this chair for me to sit in, the shirt for me to wear, the drink that I'm drinking. I need to pay for the music that I'm listening to.
You don't need a shirt.
I feel I do. I feel that as civilized people we should wear shirts.
But yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean.
And the way Spotify, and this was brought up in the Baffler article, the way Spotify calculates how it pays royalties is they pay you royalties based on
It's horrible.
the percentage of all streams that your streams or your clicks generated. So if you're
down to 0.01%, I believe. So honestly, and that may sound like, oh, you don't need much. Yeah, you do. Because keep in mind that latest Taylor Swift album, it's got a lot more views than you'll ever have, and there's about 50 other artists that will always be the top 95%.
Right. So artists, and especially yes, independent artists, composers of art music, more art-oriented music, whether that be in a popular or classical idiom, are getting shafted because they're not getting paid based on people listen to you so many times, so you're going to get this much money. They're getting paid based on, well, people didn't listen to you as much as they listen to Taylor Swift, so you're not going to get paid very much.
Well, and that's why one of the best systems to date for making music accessible because part of the thing that people use is, well, it's a good way to preview music and all that. Well, there's a better way to do it that's more legit. I love the iTunes method. Have you bought music on iTunes before?
I don't use iTunes, really, no.
Okay. Well, you should consider it because the way they do it is, first of all, everything costs 99 cents. Every single track is 99 cents, except if it's like a really new, really popular thing, it's $1.29.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I've used it before.
Yeah. But you can always preview a significant portion of the song, not just like 10, 15-second clips. If it's like a 10-minute piece, you can preview a minute and a half, 2 minutes of it. And I think that is really good because you can technically listen to music on iTunes for free, eternally. You can even do the iTunes Radio. However, the iTunes Radio, they do pay rights licensing for it. And that's the thing. I mean, it doesn't pay much because honestly, not many people use the iTunes Radio, the iHeart, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But not many people use it, so it's not as huge as something like Spotify. But they do pay for what is given. And honestly, the way they have it set up is brilliant. Every track that is there, that is played on the radio system that they have, if you're listening to that instead, it has a buy option right next to it. So it's like, oh, if you want to listen to this, instead of just waiting for 3 weeks till it comes back on again, you can buy it here for 99 cents. And sometimes they'll even throw you a bone and say it's only 69 cents.
And the way radio stations do it, I believe. Correct. You've studied this particular issue a little more than I have. But they pay, they don't necessarily pay a certain amount for every song they play. Rather, they pay a license to I think it's to licensing companies like ASCAP and BMI, and then ASCAP and BMI then distribute that money to their artists.
In a mostly fair manner. The only problem with that is you run into situations like, because do you know how ASCAP and BMI figure out how much to pay me?
I know they have people who listen to the radio and tick out.
I mean, they have that. Yeah. But the way it works, let's just say for me, let's say, I mean, on average, I've been having roughly 10 to 13 performances each calendar year since I've been here at OU.
Right.
The majority of them are at OU, handful are elsewhere. I've gotten paid more from elsewhere. And the problem is, they don't, due to the fact that most of the concerts here are just covered as educational license, you don't get paid for them.
Right.
Unfortunately. But the ones that are public concerts, things that are not like a student recital, things like that, that is far fewer for us in academia. So, then it comes down to, that has to be one of the reported shows. And you have to have someone on staff who is reporting these shows every night as they happen and submitting the programs. Because I can submit all the programs to ASCAP I want, saying, hey, look, my music is on here, pay me.
But unless
they have it from a concert venue that, oh, this concert existed, and they did indeed play his piece as kind of a matchup, I won't get paid a dime. And, I mean, full disclosure here, I think I maybe have made $10 from my OU performances thus far. Not even joking. Well, Okay, one of them was a larger show, so that one I did. I don't include that one though. That was a different case.
Well,
but
and I
in
think
general,
it does make sense to have certain privileges for educational institutions as far as licensing goes.
well, yes, but
yes.
again,
Mhm.
and I didn't quite finish.
Right.
The real problem is, do you really think that ASCAP looks at every single concert venue, every single?
Oh no, they don't have
Quarter.
time. No.
No. They look at a sampling. So, for
Yeah.
instance, you know, I have a friend that got really lucky one time. He had a piece that was played 3 times over the course of about 2-3 months. All 3 of those were canvassed for a region, the same region.
Mm-hmm.
He made like $600.
Yeah.
And and compare that to one of my checks from ASCAP, I kid you not, was I believe about $13.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They've since put in a pay, because they put in a pay thing a couple years ago where you had to have so much. But I think my funniest one was $13. It was like, why'd you even mail this to me?
I mean, you can go to, a restaurant or something and.
Well, not by the time I
Ideal.
pay DeVisi. By the
Yeah,
time I
yeah.
pay my publishing company,
Mhm.
I can't do that. By the way, pro tip: be your own publisher and
Yes,
have a
you
publishing
totally-
company. Yeah, you
But-
make double the money.
But yeah, and
But
of course,
yeah, ridiculous.
and of course, ASCAP's never going to be able to look at every program from every single.
However, what if they did? Because keep in mind, you've got systems in place
Mm-hmm.
where you can keep track of performances at a venue. We have one such program, List,
Mm-hmm.
from NoteForge, that keeps track of every performance. And there is a module that I have been beta testing
Mm-hmm.
with NoteForge, and I've been kind of pushing it a little bit with one of the developers, that actually integrates with the library
Mhm.
of that specific institution and works to kind of create a comprehensive list of, okay, in the past 10 years, Beethoven 5 was performed X amount of times. This many times were on this edition, this many times were
Mhm.
that edition. And if you have that information, you can obviously figure out, oh, Jacob Frost's improv piece was performed 3 times in the past 3 years.
Right.
Or you can figure out even things, going back to a talk we had a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
library space issues. You could figure out, wow, no ensemble ever uses these editions of Beethoven 5. We should put those in cold storage.
Right.
Why? Because they have no markings in them, no one's using them, they haven't been checked out, and the ensembles haven't been using them.
Mhm.
That's 4 strikes, and you only get 3, so I mean,
Right, yeah.
you can't defend that. So I think that the fact that a small company like NoteForge is on to such a concept, I actually think within the next decade we might reach the point where
Well,
there's just a database of performances.
and I suppose with the way AI is going, and advancing, I mean, you don't need to have people sitting there looking at every program.
Well, no, because
Right.
like Polyphony
You-
keeps track of how many
Mhm.
performances I have, and once you finish setting it up, it'll keep track of all your performances
Right.
and tell you, hey, this is your data sheet for this year. Submit that to ASCAP.
Mhm.
Go get paid.
Right.
Or I think actually every month it gives me my ASCAP. No, it's every 6 weeks. I have it send me an ASCAP digest of, hey, find these programs. Why? So that you can get money.
Mhm.
But, so, I don't know. I think we're reaching a point, maybe within the next 10 years, where that'll be mostly fully automated. And I think that, honestly, what we're waiting for at this point is kind of the older composers to stop composing. Because those older composers are still... Well, no, because they're still using the old publisher model, which, by all counts, is...
Mhm.
It's on life support at this point. I was even joking with Dr. Lamb. He thinks that the ambulance has already been called and hospice is on the way, that it's on life support and it ain't looking good. But joking aside, I mean, I think we are kind of waiting for that next big thing in order for it to be part of the innovation. Because, really, think about how good you would feel knowing that instead of making $0 from your performances, you made 50 cents. Well, I'm not even joking.
I mean,
I'm not even joking. Because
Mhm.
a standard, let's just say we charge tickets for composing tomorrow.
Right.
$5 a head. Our record attendance now, and it's been climbing, it's now 90-ish?
It's like between somewhere.
No,
between
107,
90
107.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
That's the new record. So, $500 split between 11 composers.
Everybody gets like, you know, $90.
Well, and
right,
keep in
yeah.
mind,
Mhm.
some of it goes to the house, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So half will go to house, half will go to us. So 250 split 11 ways, you know, and you could even go down to, because
Mhm.
another way to do it is by like merit of the work or whatever. So, you know, something like an improv story piece wouldn't make as much, but it's still perfectly viable. So let's just even say you make $2. Wouldn't you feel better about yourself empirically as a composer, being able to say, I didn't just waste money. I made a little something. It wasn't much of something, but this quarter I got paid $2 because I had my piece played.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, at that one, it's like, oh, woohoo, you know, $2.
Well, no, but think about it. It adds up. Then think about my situation where, I mean, my performance list for 2017
Mhm.
is currently at 13. I tried
Right.
to break 15, but I can't. For some reason, 15 is my hard cap on performances since I got to my graduate degree. I have no idea why. But maybe grad schools just don't like me. But anyways, I mean, think about that. I mean, you have those performances, and a lot of those performances are bigger, like conference performances. Those are big.
Right.
Electronic performances, even bigger, because electronic performances, less overhead cost.
Mhm.
So,
You don't have to pay anybody.
yeah, well, no, so
Right.
you think about that, and it's really easy to say, well, gee, Zach, instead of making, you know, X amount, let's just say throughout this year I make $100. That could easily boost me to 200 just by having a completely automated
Mhm.
system that keeps track of all these performances, because so many of these performances, they don't really fly under the radar, but they just aren't big enough to be noticed.
Mhm.
And that's a problem. And like, honestly, I mean, I'm trying to think of where I'm trying to think of you, like, you mostly had your stuff played at Drury and at OU at this point, right?
Yes, in the academic context, but
Like, in the recital halls.
Mhm.
So, like, for
I wouldn't make very
you,
much money.
yeah, so for you right now, as it stands, you don't make money. But, wait, have any of yours been ticketed shows?
Don't think so.
Okay. Well, I was just checking.
Right.
So with that, under the current system, you make nothing. But under a completely automated system, where schools are held honest, things like that, ASCAP and
Mhm.
BMI have a completely transparent system and completely 100% top-down system, instead of having zero kickback,
Right.
you might have, at this point, maybe $100 kickback.
Right.
I mean,
And
that's
I
enough
do
to almost
think,
get you Dorico at this point.
I mean,
Team Red!
I do think, like, I do agree with you. Like to me, you like $2 is like, haha.
Well, yeah, but it adds up.
But I do think, but at the same time, it's like, well, at least I am getting paid. Like, if I might not be getting paid much, you know, if my music doesn't get performed enough, but it is fair. You know, it should be fair. You know, if you don't get your music played very much, then I mean, you're not going to get paid very much, but you still should get paid. You know, I think, and while we got like really afar, you know, from our topic,
We did, but honestly,
I do think, I mean,
it's all related. It's all because basically the way it boils
Yeah.
down is this: the current system, no, it's not perfect, and honestly, I feel that Spotify is kind of the most. I'll just say the most perverse use of the current system.
Do you remember Groove Shark?
I think I remember its existence. I never used it though.
Groove. I think you were in the middle of a thought and I interrupted you. So continue.
No, you're fine.
But no,
you're fine.
But no, I just talking about these streaming systems. Groove. Back when I was in high school, there was this another streaming website called Groove Shark, and it was like the shadiest thing. Like you'd get albums, like it would say, I don't know,
Or half the characters in Japanese or something.
right, something like that. You'd get, what was it, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and well, it would be half a Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and then you might have a silent track thrown in, you might just have a few, you know, a couple that are just eliminated, and then one's it's called A Day in the Life, but it's been replaced with Let It Be.
See,
You
I
know?
was a good kid,
Right.
and I didn't do that.
but Groove Shark got shut down a few years ago, which is, I mean, probably a good thing. They were not legit.
Actually, wait.
Like,
I'm remembering why that's more relevant today. Are you familiar with what what Pirate Bay was?
Yeah, I know. I didn't use it, but I know what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, the same software that was used to prove the illegitimacy of Grooveshark was used to prove the illegitimacy of Pirate Bay.
Well, Pirate Bay.
You don't need software, but you
Right.
but you have to have like.
But you have
code
to have
proof.
actual
Yeah.
legal proof, right? Which
Well, and it's been recently brought against them.
And I mean,
Pirate Bay going
Yes.
down.
and and
Good.
with Grooveshark, it was actually trying to sell itself as a legitimate streaming site, which really, they were breaking the law. Pirate Bay didn't even trying. I mean, legally they couldn't do anything to him for a while. But
I mean, even though everybody knew.
even though everybody knew,
It's just like, did you
Right.
know? This is just a fun factoid. It is 100% illegal to download music illegally, and you can be arrested for it. However, did you know that most cops will not arrest you unless you've done more than $10,000?
well, I didn't know the specific number, but I know it's not very likely to get arrested for illegally downloading. And
However, I do want to propose something. What if it were? What if let's just say here in Norman, Oklahoma, we have a police chief who just decides it is now illegal to illegally download music. I mean, it's always been illegal, but we're actually going hard on it. If you have anybody that you know who is illegally downloading, you're requested to call this hotline so that we can shut them down. Repeat offenders will be imprisoned. This is a system that I feel could and should work, because the problem is a lot of people are willfully ignorant and think, oh, well, I'm not harming anybody, so I can do it all I want. I can, steal Zach's gamepad right here because it's not plugged in. He won't miss it. But it's missed because, you take the gamepad, Ashley takes this other gamepad, someone takes my mouse, Nikki comes in and steals my monitor. All of a sudden I'm going to walk in and it's like, where's all my stuff? Where is everything? So after a point, it really does add up, and that's the problem that I have with things like Spotify. And why I think that this topic was so important for us to cover, because yes, the coverage of data the scope of data kind of peering into what we listen to, I don't feel it's an immediate threat. I feel like it only serves to help us in the long run. However, the current usage of it by Spotify, which I still don't approve of Spotify, this is really the worst thing they could have done. Because not only does it kind of push me and you down, it just kind of puts a foot on you, and unless you're in like the top 90 percentile, you're gonna...
Spotify already screws over composers.
They do,
right.
And so not only have they done that, but they've also set up a precedence to where now it's like, oh, see, keeping track of data is bad. Think about it. That is how 99% of the public is going to take this. They're going to take it as, oh, see, keeping track of data is bad. And now, if we have a legislator in a few years come up with something that says, hey, I want to keep track of data to keep people from illegally downloading stuff, he's going to be shut down, and it's going to be like, well, Spotify did that, and it screwed up the music industry.
I mean, he shouldn't be allowed to do that if it requires him to perform illegal surveillance, which a lot of things the government does now are illegal surveillance.
You know that internet providers already do, and they actually have a moral obligation and legal obligation to inform anybody of trackable criminal activity over the internet.
Right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be tracking criminal activity over the internet. I'm putting the caveat in of we shouldn't be tracking criminal activity over the internet without illegally through means that are unconstitutional.
Well,
which is why I oppose the NSA. And we have 5 minutes left, and I'm getting into politics.
No politics.
We'd better not go too far down this rabbit hole.
We better not.
But no. Like, I agree, and of course, government and law enforcement is very behind on crime that happens electronically. They really don't. They really haven't figured out how to stop it. And I think part of the issue is, I think we really do have to take our civil liberties seriously, and privacy and the Fourth Amendment. I think it's the Fourth Amendment. I don't remember which one. The one that
one of the amendments.
The surveillance, and you can't survey someone without a warrant. But we also can't simply ignore what goes on the internet, because a lot of criminal activity. I mean, we were just talking about the other day, sex trafficking. A lot of that happens on the dark web, things like this.
Well, and it's stuff that's easy enough to track, and it's stuff that I'll put it this way: I don't have a problem with my ISP. Like if I use AT&T, if AT&T were to say, "Hey, all users, your data is going to be not necessarily tracked, but it's going to be monitored, and if we see you accessing any of these sites that are known for criminal activity, illegal downloads, illegal torrents, illegal music streaming, things like Groove Shark or Pirate Bay, any of that kind of stuff, then we reserve the right to, we use the, I'm just saying like that. Right. We reserve the right to shut off the internet and inform authorities. I think that is okay, as long as there's a caveat in there of, we will not transmit this data to outside parties. It will only be transmitted to law enforcement if you are breaking one of these laws.
And most of the time you sign a user agreement, there's going to be a clause in there that says you can't use this to do anything illegal.
Yeah, but the problem is it's not enforced.
Well, and
just like the music downloading thing. I mean, I know musicians who illegally download music and don't think, like, they don't know that it's illegal. I kid you not. Just like I know a graphic artist who illegally downloaded Adobe Photoshop, saying, well, it's okay because I need it for what I do. And that's the equivalent of if I were to sit here on camera and say, "Hi Steinberg, I love your product. I like advertising it, but I stole it from you." I didn't steal it, but it'd be like me saying that. Steinberg, I love you. I didn't steal your product. I promise. Actually, I almost paid for it twice.
And I'm not quite as hardcore about copyright law as you are. As anybody who's heard us talk about it, outside of this would know, I don't equate illegal with immoral. However, I do agree with you that if you're going to get art, you should be getting it through legal channels, because how is the artist going to eat otherwise? So I mean, yes. Spotify is legal, but this is where, I mean, illegal and immoral are not synonymous. Spotify might be legal, but is it acting immorally? Well, I think you would argue no, and I would kind of argue no too. I mean, you get paid a pittance.
Yeah.
And
what's more is that now they're scaling it against you. They're 100% scaling it against you, and that's the part that really, it just makes you wonder, has Spotify had this in mind as their quote end game? Like, is that really the thing that they did?
Well, we're about out of time today. There's actually other stuff I wanted to address about this Spotify.
This ended up being a really big topic,
but we didn't get to it. So we might talk a little more about. One of the things I wanted to get into is that kind of got brought up at the beginning, is, do listeners have a responsibility to, like what's the responsibility of the listener and of the audience in supporting art?
I have a really quick response to that.
Yeah.
I think that, much like being a Nielsen family for television, whenever that was a thing, I think you do have at least a minor responsibility, because keep in mind, the world is looking to you, and, like, let's just say there's 100 people that are going to be polled for Spotify. You have a lot of weight on your shoulders.
But I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree, though, because at some point you start to moralize personal taste, and I don't know if it's good, to moralize personal taste. But you were gonna
Well, what I was gonna
Like,
say is
mhm.
it doesn't like. I'm not saying that has to change you, but it would make you self-conscious about, for you, for instance.
Mhm.
Oh man, I've listened to like half and half. Do I want to push it over to I've listened to more, in your case, Rush, or do I want to listen to this contemporary piece by John Adams?
That's where I'm going to stop you and say you are moralizing personal taste, because you can't, because popular music is not inherently less valuable.
No,
than,
I'm not saying that.
Right.
And that's why I said from your perspective.
Right.
As someone who enjoys Rush and John Adams, you know that one of those is going to get the preferential treatment from you on your listening report to Spotify. You're faced then with your own inner debate and your own choice, knowing that this is going to impact people down the line. Do I feel that this is more important or this?
I'm not. I listen to what I want.
Well, no, I know, but you would at least have that in the back of your mind, whether you access it or not.
No, I don't.
Well, you should.
But I do think. Here's my caveat here. I do think it's important to support excellence, whatever you're doing, whether it's art or any other pursuit. We should all support and affirm excellence in art or in music or whatever. However, we don't all have to support excellence in the same way, and I don't necessarily know if I'd say that there's no moral aspect to personal. I wouldn't say that there's no moral aspect to personal taste, because I do think that
in our instance there isn't.
I do think that you can.
But that'd be a bad blanket statement.
I do think that you can cultivate. I do think that it's important to cultivate your mind, and it's particularly your listening mind in a way that makes you more willing to support excellence, in a way that makes you more aware of what's good and such and such. But aside from that broad aspect, I don't see there being a moral conflict between listening to Rush or John Adams on Spotify. Both are excellent. Both are things that I want to support.
And that is your your opinion. But I'm not going to extend this too far, but maybe just something for you to think about and for anybody else to think about. What if the thing you're listening to that is, we'll just say, A+ tier, what if you're what if you know objectively that you are one of the 3 people in the world that enjoy the particular composer, the particular band, or this one guitarist that you can't get enough of? And I'm not saying that to criticize you or anyone, but I mean, at that point, are you projecting your own tastes on everyone else? But anyway, that's just something to think about and mull over. I mean, it's an interesting concept.
I think what you just said is basically a non sequitur to what I just said. But we're out of time.
Yeah.
So perhaps next week we'll get into this more. But for now, yes, send us your hate mail and perhaps your non-hate mail. Appreciation is appreciated also. So goodbye, and we will see you next week.
Yeah. See ya.